Okay, hello. I think we're live on all platforms, or if we're not, that's wonderful. We shall soon find out. Oh, we won't. That's okay. Okay. So, tiki mug time. MBs, ladies and gentlemen, what exactly are we doing here? Well, my mic seems to be a little bit too loud. How's that? I feel like that's better. I also feel like I need to take a photo for the grams because photos for the grams need to happen. What are we doing today, NBs, ladies and gentlemen? Today we are creating a tiki mug. We're creating a tiki mug, the first part of a tiki mug. I should say that the way that I create tiki mugs anyway is in Blender. And if you haven't used Blender before, firstly, I'd thoroughly recommend it because it's fun. Secondly, I shall just take a photo for Instagram and other purposes so that I can tell people I'm here. Hello. That seemed to have worked. And away we go. So we're going to create a tiki mug today, and it's going to be a tiki mug that is a TNT tiki mug. What do I mean by that? Well, if you think about cartoons from the 80s and or 90s, well then you get the idea. It's basically a Wile E. Coyote based experience. TNT, plunger, some rocks in the background, the whole sort of thing. That probably didn't make sense, but it may do. Or not. Let's take a look. Happily, TNT kind of is the right shape. Cylindrical. So let's try to do something here. I'm just seeing that the background, you're starting to see a little bit of my background there, which is not necessarily the greatest, but that's okay. Okay, so what are we going to do? I have to go on standby. Don't mind me for just a moment. And we're back. I'm sure that you waited that entire time for me to be finished with my dark purpose, which was putting something on social media. Okay, so let's get to creating this tiki mug. So what we're going to do is I think we're going to have a number of TNT sticks and then we are going to have a little detonator and a clump of rocks. So what I've got here is a blank. Doesn't look like much, but it gives me the basic coordinates, basic geometry of a tiki mug. That's the general idea. Seem to have some black in my background. I'm not sure what that is, but I think we can probably deal without it. That's okay. So I think what we're going to do is we're firstly going to grab a couple of these and we're going to artistically move them around and artistically sort of get them into a clump. And then I think actually what we might do, because these are not sort of classic Bugs Bunny TNT shapes, so I think what we'll do I'm getting constraining issues. So we'll just do it that way. We're going to just come on, don't be awful. No, we'll start again. And we will constrain in other ways. What I'm basically trying to do is to just bring that down into a more TNT-ish aspect. And okay, let's try that. No, come back down. Okay, that's the way. All right, we'll just do that and then we'll, okay. No. Okay, that's what we wanted. Okay, so we have one. We need to create a bundle. I could do an array, but I can't be bothered. So instead, I'm just going to eyeball it. I generally eyeball everything in this program because I can't be bothered learning it better. If you've come to actually to see Blender in some sort of tutorial fashion, I should say this is not necessarily the place to find it. No, this is just me using Blender in the most useless kind of ways just to get what I'm after. And what I'm after is a tiki mug. All right, so that's okay. These are going to be non-artesian, whatever. We might even delete the blank after we're finished, but we'll keep going. All right, another one there. So we need to start thinking about layout. What's this thing actually going to look like? So I'm just going to move that. How many of these have I created? Okay, I'm going to move that out of the way. There's our dynamite sticks. And I think what we're going to do is to move them into a kind of a triptych here. And we won't worry about the fact that there's a thing in the middle. Now, is this what we want out of a tiki mug? I mean, it's interesting, but I think what we're going to want to do is to make all of these a little bit skinnier and probably have them only over half of the mug. So let's go back and create some more. Firstly, let's see if we can change the placement around. Nope, no, did not want that. Do we create a placement kind of like that? What does that look like? It's getting about the right width. But I think we want them to be a little bit skinnier because this is getting to be a really thick tiki mug and that's no good. So we're going to grab one, we're going to kill off 3 and we're going to make this a bit skinnier. Also, we don't want to make it. Okay. Make it skinnier. That's good. And now we will take it up to our blank. Where's our blank gone? That's our blank there. And we'll just scale it up. Okay, does that more look like a TNT stick? Let's not scale it up all the way. I think I've got an idea. I think what we'll do is we'll have the TNT sticks coming out of a piece of ground. I think that's what we'll probably do. So we don't need it to be that long. So that's our blank. Don't need it to be that long. We just need the overall height of the entire thing to be about the right size. Okay. So now I think 3 is about the right number for your dynamite sticks. And we can kind of get them a little bit wonky, I think. We can kind of get them a little bit off center. Right now this is a little bit too neat, but we'll fix that in a sec. Okay, so now we need to do something with the rest of the base to get our height. So I think what we'll do is firstly we'll create. So there's 2 other elements I want to get in there. One is a plunger, like a TNT plunger, and the other one is some rock. Now the rock being sort of organic, we can kind of use that at the end to cover our sins. So let's first create our plunger. Let's start there and we can go from there. Okay. So plunger, we're going to want probably a little bit offset and a little bit sort of jaunty all round. So let's firstly make it more of a box and less of a square. Same on that side. We'll pull this in as well. We're also going to need a plunger. I don't know how we're going to make the plunger at this point because we can't have it sticking out. We may actually stick it in one of these divots here. All right, let's get our TNT box situated. That needs to be going in a little bit like that. And the TNT box, it's not a bad angle for it, but I think what I want to do... Decisions. I actually think I want these to be a little bit shorter. That feels more TNT-ish. And let's make that a bit smaller. That is all wrong. Needs to be a little bit bigger. How does that work? Now, of course, I'm not worried about the fact that it's going through the actual tiki mug at this stage, or the actual sort of the TNT point at this stage. That's okay. Let's get this oriented some more. Do we want it straight on? I feel like having it straight on is just going to be a bit, I don't know. You all want this to be fairly organic. Okay. All right, so now what I need to do is to give this a little bit of cant this way. I think we might just do it just a little bit. And that can then help create our base. And then I think we can then, if we put this right in the middle, I can then put a plunger across there and embed it in, and then that will kind of look a little bit more natural. Okay. Okay, you know what? I think what we're going to do is... Actually, I want to keep that for a sec, because we need it to get our right heights and everything. You know what? I think what we're going to do is I think we're going to make these a lot shorter. A lot smaller and a lot shorter. And have them not, at least not a lot, play with the TNT. Although that then makes the TNT look a bit weird. Okay, so let's try a couple of things. Let's try increasing the stack. And we're going to have to probably make it fairly extensive. This is going to be a large amount of TNT that we're going to be playing with here. Envies, ladies and gentlemen. Large amount of TNT. Because we're pretty much going to have to clump it like that. Unless, of course... All right. How are we feeling about this? I think we've made this worse. I think that we have definitely not made this a better experience. So let's take a look. What can we do? Oh, let's try going back to 3, because I think 3 is about the right number. Making them bigger. Making this smaller slightly. And okay. And we might need to do a bit of reorientation of that now, which is fine. We can do that. Okay. Let's build out a some rubble. So this whole thing, I think we want to be ensconced with rubble. I think we also need to pull this in a little bit, because eventually this needs to be a tiki mug. And we will... Let's chuck the plunger in now, actually. Just why not? Okay. Now the plunger should actually be on the same orientation as the box. Should have thought of this one before I did anything else, but that's okay. We can just change its orientation now. So it basically has to go a little bit up. That's close enough. And this will necessitate the box coming out a little bit, just to make that work. And we don't really want it nestled in. In fact, there we go. Okay, I'm feeling pretty good about that. Okay. Doesn't matter if it clips a little bit. In fact, we can probably start playing with these bits of dynamite, just moving them around a little bit so that they're a little less uniform. Okay, crossbar. Now, I'm not doing this particularly precisely because I don't want to. Because the whole idea of doing this not precisely is because you can then have control over what you're doing. Okay, that looks awful, but we'll make it look less awful. All of this is going to be dramatically cleaned up when we get to the sculpting part. I'm not even sort of sculpting at this point. I'm just assembling stuff. Because what I have found when you are sculpting tiki mugs in Blender is that it's a lot easier to do a rough assemble of everything first and sort of get your get your pieces in place, there we go, right, plunger, than it is to sculpt everything once you're done. All right, let's check all of our details here. All right, so this whole thing is about the right size. If we consider that we're also going to put a base on it. I also probably want this to be a little bit shorter, I think. So let's do that. Reattach that to that. Okay. Now, question, do we want more sticks of dynamite? Is this going to be a particularly dynamite-y experience? Don't know is the answer. So, let's just build some rocks around it and see how we look. So, let's create, probably a sphere, I think. We don't need the sphere to be that big. We can get it to be a lot smaller. I'm not worried too much also about... I don't think that's going to work. We're going to need to make it a lot smaller. How's that? So I feel like we want this embedded into the rock. So this is, by the way, the icosphere here is our rock. And it's almost where it needs to be. We'll just get this a little bit seated a bit better. Now, the rock needs to be kind of there, which means we're going to need to shift it up, move it across. Okay, I'm kind of feeling good about that. I also feel like this now necessitates the entire TNT box to move down a little bit, because I feel like we're going to need to cover in some space. How does that look? Not great. Do we make the TNT box bigger, or do we make the dynamite bigger? I think we all know the question, or know the answer to that. We make the TNT bigger. That is the far more interesting part of this equation. So, do we make it longer, or do we make it deeper? Or do we make it both? Let's move this up a bit. And move that up a bit. And move that up a bit. Doesn't matter if they're all on a different plane, because that's fine. Okay, so I think we have ourselves a... still not crazy on these proportions. I think I liked it better before. So, in order to get this to work, do we, number one, scale up the whole thing? Number two, leave it as is? I think we scale up the whole thing. No, we need to scale it up just a little bit more. Okay. Now, we won't worry about the rest of that rock because we'll fix that later. We might Boolean out the base of the rock, I think. We might move these a little bit further together, I think, because they need to be touching. And it's not going to matter if they're not particularly not touching. This is obviously a great use of English. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at where we are. That's great. Let's create a cube. What we're going to do now is just some maintenance now so that we don't have to do it later on. A lot of the stuff we're going to have to do later on anyway, but this is just to kind of set the scene. I think we're actually going to put it there. We're also going to make sure everything is happily overlapping. It's not going to matter too much if we've got these sort of weird sort of intersections here. What's going to matter more is if they're not they're not matching. This area though is a little bit of a worry. Let's make that okay. So we've just got to get everything as lined up as best possible. We want things, much better to have things intersecting for when we go into sculpting. What you don't want is tiny little gaps. Okay, it's time to Boolean. So, let us... Oh, I don't like that gap much. That's all right, we can probably weave that down later. All right, so what we're going to do now is to Boolean stuff. And the way we do that is, you can't actually see that here. Let's just, let's make this a little bit easier to deal with. There we go. I think we can see everything now, can we? Mostly. I don't know why this stream, I mean, it should be the same size as my monitor, but it isn't, so that's a shame. All right, well, let's add a modifier. So we're going to generate a Boolean here. We're going to go for a union. And we're going to just apply this a whole bunch of times. And every time we do, we basically leave something on the scrap heap. Because what Boolean does is basically uses, or it fuses geometry or removes geometry It's basically a quick and dirty way, not dirty, it's a quick and useful way to grab and fuse or remove or whatever geometry. So you can see there now our tiki mugs are fused, and now I'm just going to get rid of not tiki mugs now. I don't know, my sticks are fused. So we basically just do this a bunch of times. Now there's probably a quicker way to do this, but I'm not aware of it. And like I say, I don't use this because I profess to be a fantastic blender user. I use it because it's a very quick and iterative way to be quick and iterative. Okay. So we go, we grab that cylinder. No. Apply. Get rid of that cylinder. Add modifier, generate. Boolean. Union. Grab that one. Apply. Okay, so now we've got basically our... Get them out of the way. We've basically now got the TNT plunger. We've got our TNT sticks. And we've got our rock. Now, before we do our last Boolean-ing, I want to make sure that everything, or that nothing, has small and annoying divots anywhere. That's an annoying divot, but I think we can live with it. Although if we make the rock bigger, well, we can cut down this rock later. The only reason for using an icosphere here, this is this type of sphere, an icosphere. Different ways of doing spheres in Blender. There is an icosphere and then there's a non-icosphere. I don't know what it's called. But it basically, an icosphere gives you a whole bunch of points, and it's a normal sphere. If you create one, let's just do this here, a UV sphere, that's what it's called. So UV sphere looks like that, and it has the benefit of having kind of meridians and longitude and latitude. So meridian of longitude and something of latitude, or it's the other way around. I should know these things, but I don't. It's got an equator, and it's got longitudinal lines on it. And this is wonderful, except it means that the geometry changes throughout. So you can see here it's spheres, square, 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 and at the end it's a bunch of triangles. So the reason why icospheres, I think, are better for this purpose, and I don't really know, to be honest. Well, I don't know if they are better, but I prefer them. The reason that icospheres are preferable is that you get exactly the same geometry all the way round, which just makes it a bit easier to play with. Okay, let's take a look. There's a little corner there, little corner there. All right, let's move this just a little bit bigger. And a little bit out. All right, I think that's covering all of our sins. There's a little one there, but we can live with that. We're going to have to really slim it down to get it back to the right shape, but we are up for the challenge. All right, let's just play with this. We're going to have to send it either way, so we might as well just make it go and see what happens. All right, am I still in frame? I am still in frame. This is a good sign. And I have more headroom than I think. Don't mind me as I adjust my desk to make sure my hair doesn't clip out too often. We're trying to be professional on these streams, don't you know? Okay. Now, plunges aren't going too far out. Nothing looks like it's overhanging too badly. Although that is going to create an overhang, I think. Here we come up against one of the central problems of tiki mug making, and that is overhangs. So an overhang is when you have a piece of geometry that a mold is going to hang up on. What do I mean by that? Well, when you create a tiki mug, the last step, the step that I hate, is actually creating a plaster mold for it. And there's a whole different sort of ways you do it, and it's all very involved. And I do a lot of 3D printing to help make that easier. But the issue is that the plaster is solid, like it has no give. It's just solid, and the mug that you create from it is also solid. What this means is that at no stage can you have something that is going to trap the mold. The mold starts off not solid because it's plaster, it's wet, and then it sets. So if you have any bits of geometry that will make the plaster hang up, that is no good. Now there are ways you can get around it, but none of those ways are particularly nice. So the best way to get around it is to not do it in the first place, is to set your geometry so that you don't create any overhangs. So sadly, I'm going to have to create a TNT that is relatively straight. I'm also going to have to recess it in from where it is. So that's the TNT thing sorted. Now we're going to have to move this back and up. And we're going to have to move that back. Okay, I'm feeling better about this, even though the TNT has to remain upright. I think that's okay. The whole thing's going to be stylized anyway. And all of this is going to come in. It's all going to come shaped in, which we'll do at a later date. In fact, I could do it now. Let's do it now. Okay, it's still a rock, but it's kind of... that's a little bit much. All right, how's that? That feels more rocky on the whole. And we'll just bring it in so that it's a little bit whatever. And yeah, I'm kind of feeling good about that. Right, last thing we need to do is we're going to fuse everything together and then we're going to start sculpting it. So sculpting is the next step, but before we sculpt, we need to pull everything together. So let's Boolean everything up. Union to the rock. In fact, before we do that, I'm going to save. And in order to save, I'm going to put you on standby. Be back in a sec. And we're back. So all you didn't see was me opening up my C drive and saving it into the C drive. That's it. Okay, so on we go. So let's boolean some of this stuff up. Let's do that. And let's do that. Okay, so now we have a whole bunch of refuse in the form of things that we've discarded, all of which I'm now going to get rid of. And we have the central tiki mug. What we also have is this block here. And I've kept this block for a very special reason. And the very special reason is we are now going to give the thing a solid base. The way we're going to do that is to add another Boolean modifier. So I'm going to go difference. And what that does was that will basically cut something out. And we're going to cut that out. And we're going to press apply. Move that away and you'll see we have a solid base. Do we have a solid base? I feel like, yeah. All right, let's undo all of our good work. Okay, so what I've done is I have tried to be smart and tried to shave off just the very edge of our TNT. And that did not work at all. So let's try this again. I'm going to grab that. We're going to add a modifier. We're going to generate a Boolean. We're going to do the difference. We're going to grab the thing. We're going to do like that. We're going to go apply, get rid of that. Hopefully, we have a clean base, which we do. Fabulous. Okay. And ladies and gentlemen, we have a tiki mug with which we can now play. All right. Let's go over and sculpt it. This is the fun bit. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to remesh. So what does remeshing do? Remeshing, if I can find the right button for it, there we go. Okay, sorry about that little issue there. Remeshing basically gives us more of a many more pixels, many more voxels, many more corners to play with. And as you can see, it's done an okay job of it, but it's meant that we've got a fair bit of cleanup to do. By remeshing, it's kind of made all the bits that stick together in not the greatest way. So, what do we do first? Do we clean up edges first? No, let's do that towards the end. Okay. Let's do some large scale playing. To do that first, let's do some blobbing. We're basically just going to turn this into a rock. Now we need to be careful about how we're turning it into a rock, but we're basically just going to go around it and rockify it. Just a whole bunch of stuff like that. Make it look vaguely organic. Now, I've got to be fairly careful here. There are ways that you can mask out. See, there we go. A vaguely organic rock. See, doesn't that look fantastic? It will look more rocky later on as well. And then we've got our TNT sticking out of it. We've got to be a little bit careful, and I think I've been fairly lucky here to not get the TNT mixed up with the rock. We should figure out a way to do a fuse for the TNT as well. I think what we... okay. An idea for later on. We'll actually create a fuse as well. And you can see here that, speaking of fusing, everything is kind of fused together. You can see in here that the TNT is now pretty much all stuck together. Now we're going to have to write TNT onto here as well. Something I'm not looking forward to, although if we stylize it, we can probably make it work. All right, let's do some cleanup. First thing we do is let's smooth some of the issues we have with the TNT. All right, so let's smooth the TNT. Now, you can see there I just did one pass, and it's really started to... maybe we don't want it that strong. And we want to up the radius, I think. There we go. Maybe not that much of a radius. And maybe a little bit more strength. That hasn't worked out the way I wanted. Let's get a little bit more fine control, shall we? All right. Smooth. Okay. So right now it's kind of... No, need a little bit more. Okay. Now we're also going to, I think, smooth off these corners. Because we can smooth them and then make them more jagged later on. But we're going to need to... Part of the thing about creating a tiki mug, I find as well, is you don't want any rough corners, because ultimately someone needs to be able to pick this up and drink a mocktail from it. Also, rough corners are not as great or shouldn't say rough corners. More definitive sharp corners are not that great for the tiki mug experience when you're actually casting these things. You kind of want everything to be smoothed over. Nothing too sharp. Okay. Now, I'm kind of sort of being quite rough with this. But that's okay. Because throughout the entire process, there's really a procession of sharpening, then smoothing, then sharpening again. And ultimately, you end up with a kind of you end up where you need to be, but every time you do a pass, that having been said, I didn't like any of that, so I'm going to undo most of that. Every time you do a pass and add detail, you end up having to re-etch in lines, all that sort of stuff. So a lot of it is just very, very iterative. Okay. Okay. Let's get this looking schmick. Okay, so I've just upped the detail a fair amount. And I'm not liking where this smoothing is going. I really don't. That's a little better. We're going to create it. We're going to make it even smoother. I'm actually going to start cutting things in, I think. I don't like the lines that are here as well. I probably could have fixed them, to be honest, ages ago, but I did not. If look at that. We could really do some damage with this tool. We're going to need to get that even smoother at some point. Okay, let's use the crease tool. What I want to do is to sort of start making some defining edges here. Kind of get this to be a little sharper in the corners. Not a lot, because we still need to give a definition, but what I'm trying to do is just pull back a little bit. Let's down the strength a little bit, because that was getting silly. All right. I think my crease... that's what I want. That's what I want. Cool. All right. So now we commence decreasing. I might take that strength down a little bit. So now what we're going to do, maybe not that lesser strength. And you can see here if we zoom right in, it's still not particularly high definition. If you did all of this high definition for a start, it would chug a fair bit. But this way you really kind of map out what you want before it's too late, basically. You can make macro changes. See, so already this is starting to stand out a little bit. What we can also start to do here is go back in and smooth it. So basically, the smooth tool is almost like the undo tool of the entire deal. It basically just makes everything a little bit more mellow, undoes all of your more vehement actions. Should we, I think this is also looking a little bit boring up the top. I think what we're going to need to do firstly is to have some fuses, which we'll do in the next step. And I think we're also going to need to we're going to need some fuses. We're going to need TNT written on that in the true Wile E. Coyote way. And we're going to... Do we want some start of an explosion, perhaps? That could be cool. Or it could look awful. Or we could turn this into the actual explosion. We could have, instead of this being rock, we could have this as the red of the explosion. That could be cool as well. Now, the plunger is only halfway down, but if it was all the way down, it wouldn't look like a plunger. Let's leave that to our imaginations for now. And I think we might leave it there for this stream. Next time we go into higher detail. Next time we maybe do some more texturing of this whole thing. Next time we definitely put TNT on the thing. We check that everything's good to go. We might put a base and a top on it as well. Because one thing about this mug so far is it's not particularly drinkable out of. All of this and more. Coming to a stream near you, probably. We shall see. Also, I need to finish the Pelican one. I haven't finished the Pelican one. We shall probably come back and finish the Pelican one as well.